I would next like to examine another symbol of this worldwide worship of the sun god. And that symbol is the obelisk, a tall, four-sided pillar tapering towards its pyramidal top. This is the opening of the Wednesday morning news program at NBC News. Since this is a morning news show, it is presumed that this is a picture of a sunrise rather than of a sunset, but notice that the picture of the sunrise was specifically taken with the obelisk in the front. It appears that someone at NBC knows about the connection between the rising sun and the obelisk. Albert Pike, the famous Mason, told us what the purpose of the obelisk was. He said the obelisk was consecrated to the sun. So the obelisk is a symbol of sun worship. But Carl Claudy, another 33rd degree Mason, told us that the obelisk had an esoteric or concealed meaning. He wrote this: "The initiate of old saw in the obelisk the very spirit of the god he worshipped. In Egypt, the obelisk stood for the very presence of the sun god himself." Please repeat that. Please remember that. In Egypt, the obelisk stood for the very presence of the sun god himself. So the obelisk stands for the very presence of the sun god wherever it's located. Now I'd like to explain that the sun god is Lucifer. We'll be covering that for the next several sections about this to show you that the sun god is and always has been Lucifer, Satan, the devil. Now here's an obelisk with a specific connection with sun god worship. This obelisk was erected in 1596 by King Henry IV after a victory in a war. Note that there are 12 blocks in the obelisk, with the pyramid on top being the 13th. So here we see the Masonic number 13 hidden in the number of blocks in the obelisk. We'll see that concealed number 13 again in another obelisk of great importance a little later. And this is a close-up of the top, and it shows a sun and a crown on top. That appears to mean that the sun is a god or a king. If this is a concealed message that King Henry IV was claiming that his victory in the war was due to the Lord of the world, the sun god, it might very well be. This is a page from a catalog produced by Barnes & Noble booksellers. They sell various art objects, one of which is this miniature obelisk. And if you could read the caption to the side, it would say that the obelisk is 13 inches high. I do not believe that this is a coincidence. Those who produced this miniature obelisk knew the symbology of the number 13, and they made their obelisk precisely that high. Before I continue my discussion of the obelisk as a symbol to the Masons, I'd like to explain why the number 33 is so important to the Masons. It is a symbolic number, as we shall see. This is a drawing of the human backbone. If you count the number of vertebrae, you will find that they number 32. There are 32 vertebrae in the human backbone. That would make the skull the 33rd vertebrae because it is connected to the backbone at the top. The skull is the location of the brain, therefore it is the seat of the human ability to reason. And as we have seen, the Masons worship the mind, the seat of the human reason. And to prove that, I'd like to refer to this book entitled Deadly Deception by a 33rd degree Mason named Jim Shaw. Mr. Shaw became a Christian during the interval between his 32nd and 33rd degrees of the Masonic order. So he was not a Christian when he was invited to become a 33rd degree Mason. But before he went, he made a decision about Christ. He wrote this about his 33rd degree Masonic initiation ceremony. One of the conductors then handed the candidate a human skull upside down with wine in it. And then Mr. Shaw states that the initiate was asked to drink from it. A few years ago, while I was touring a museum in Florida, the guide who was taking a group of us through the exhibits told us that headhunters from the jungles of South America sever the head from their victim, remove the skull, and then drink blood from it. This is supposed to impart the wisdom of the vanquished to the victor. And here we see the Masons duplicating the ceremony for apparently the same reason. It is presumed that the Masons drink wine, a colored substitute for the real thing, meaning blood, from the skull, so that they can symbolically obtain the wisdom of the person whose head they are drinking from. And some of the world's leading politicians and leaders have drunk wine from a skull as a 33rd degree Mason. I mentioned at the beginning of the lecture that I was going to offend some of you. I am now going to show you a series of slides, some of which will be offensive to the Catholics in the viewing audience. I want you to know that I am sorry for that, but I must tell the truth whenever I find it, because what I have found is that this conspiracy has become involved in concealing the symbols of this sun worship inside the Catholic Church. But please let me add this comment for the Catholic. Catholics do not become conspirators. Conspirators become Catholics. But I must hasten to add, if these slides offend you, do not take it up with me, but ask your church why they are utilizing these Masonic or Luciferic symbols in their religion. As I said once before, I was a Catholic for 39 years of my life, and I only wish that someone had shown me these slides years before, because I would have been offended and then asked the church for some answers. And if I couldn't have found any, I would have come out a lot sooner than I did. So Catholic, if you are offended at these slides, do not be offended at me. I am only the messenger. You should be offended by the message. This conspiracy has infiltrated your church, and I'm only trying to point out how that has happened and what these symbols mean. Let me start by showing you some slides of the magnificent Gothic cathedrals constructed by the Catholic Church. Then I'd like to explain that they contain some Masonic symbols in their building walls. Let me first show you a picture of the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, France. This is just one of the many beautiful Gothic structures that were designed and constructed by members of the Masonic Lodge. The Masons admit that they have hidden, concealed symbols in the construction of these cathedrals. This is a close-up of the rose window on the front side of the church. The circle next to the outer ring has 32 sections in it, and the circle in the middle would become the 33rd. As I have explained, the number 33 is a concealed number of great importance to the Masons and their worship of Lucifer, the sun god. This is a slide of Salisbury Cathedral in England. Here we see two outside obelisks and one in the center. This is the beautiful Gothic Cathedral at Ulm, Germany. Once again, here we see the huge obelisk in the front of the cathedral and two to the rear. Also notice that there are 12 smaller obelisks on the side, so that the huge obelisk becomes the 13th. Once again, the Masons have concealed their symbols around the churches they built for the Catholic Church. Don't forget that the obelisk stands for the very presence of the sun god, Lucifer himself. Another obelisk of some importance is this one in the Vatican in Rome, Italy. This obelisk was moved here in 1586 by a Catholic pope named Pope Sixtus V. So it has been here for over 400 years. The next two slides are two pictures of the obelisk and two modern-day popes. And the first one shows Pope Paul VI addressing the crowd of people in St. Peter's Square right in front of the obelisk, the very presence of the sun god, Lucifer. And the second photo shows the current Pope, John Paul II, also addressing the crowd once again in St. Peter's Square. If I was Pope and heard one person comment about the obelisk being a symbol of the very presence of the sun god himself, I would first check it out, and if it were true, I would then have that obelisk immediately removed. But this obelisk has been there for over 400 years. There is another Masonic connection to the area near the obelisk. This is another shot of the same square looking from the other end. The Vatican, the building in which the Pope resides, is at the other end of the picture. Those columns around the obelisk are called the Bernini Colonnade. As best I can count, there are 32 columns on each side. The 33rd would be the circle around the obelisk. Remember that the circle is a symbol of the sun god, and that the number 33 is a Masonic symbol concealing a worship of the sun god Lucifer. I will show you other connections between Masonry and the Catholic Church a little later in another context. Next, I'd like to return to my discussion of the Great Seal of the United States. This is called the front side of the Great Seal. Notice the eagle shown in the center. Many historians have commented on the debate in early America on whether the founding fathers should name the eagle or the wild turkey as this nation's national bird. Please forgive me for using the drawing of a turkey found in a liquor ad, because it was the only wild turkey I could find. The debate was not a debate at all. It was only a cover because it is now known that the eagle was always going to be the national bird of America. The Masons have told us how important the eagle is as a symbol of something else. I'd like to quote 6 writers on the subject, 5 of whom are Masons. I will not identify these. These are just comments to show you how important the eagle is in mysticism. The first slide says, in mysticism, the eagle is a symbol of initiation. The eagle is of great antiquity, figuring in the symbolic inventory of the Egyptians as the sun. So please hold that thought. I'll discuss it a little later, a little further. As wisdom is attained through reason, the eagle is also symbolic of reason. Here's another quote. The eagle was sacred to the sun. And here are some Masonic thoughts on how the eagle was connected to the sun as a symbol. The eagle was a bird consecrated to the sun in Egypt. The eagle also represented the great Egyptian sun god Amun-Ra. The eagle is a symbol of the infinite supreme reason or intelligence. And the next quote will explain why the eagle is a symbol of the sun. The eagle is also supposed to be the only creature that can look directly into the sun. If we humans look directly at the sun, we will go blind. Apparently the eagle can look directly at the sun without going blind. So the eagle is a concealed symbol of sun worship because he can look directly at the sun without going blind. That means that he can look directly at the face of the sun god, and we humans cannot. So I believe that is the reason the eagle has become a universal symbol of the sun god. Let's continue with our thoughts about this sun god and the eagle. What if Kur-Om, the symbol of the light and representative of the sun, were also the symbol of the divine and perfect truth that dazzles the eyes of all except the eagles and the hawks, which in ancient Egypt were sacred to Atum, Amun-Ra, and Mendes, the great gods. So the eagle has 2 hidden symbolism. One is that the eagle can go directly to the sun god, and the second is that the eagle is a symbol of reason. And to show you that the eagle on the Great Seal of the United States and on the American dollar bill is not a drawing of a real eagle, this eagle has 32 feathers on the right wing and 33 on the left wing. There are some who claim that this is an eagle from the Old Testament, but I want to state that the God of the Bible does not make any imperfect eagles. This eagle is imperfect. It has 32 feathers on one wing and 33 on the other. Once again, the numbers 32 and 33 are extremely important to the Masons and their concealed worship of the sun god Lucifer. This is what Egyptologists refer to as the winged symbol of perfection. Unfortunately, this slide's taken a little bit high, but you'll notice that there are 2 snakes, one on either side of the circle, the symbol of the sun, and then on the side are feathers. You will count 31 on the right and 32 on the left. So the circle, the symbol of the sun, would be the 32nd for the right side and the 33rd for the left. This shows you that this Egyptian symbol, this symbol of 32 and 33, is very, very old. And the snake on each side is a universal symbol of the sun god Lucifer. I'd like to show you some other fascinating 33s concealed in history. This is a symbol of the government of the old Soviet Union. Notice the partial circle on the bottom center of the symbol. If you count the rays sticking out from the semicircle, there are precisely 32 of them. And if the semicircle was completed, it would be a circle, and the circle is a symbol of the sun. And if you add the 32 and the circle as 33, then you now have a connection to the Masonic Lodge. One can only imagine what these Masonic symbols have to do with the Russian government. So as I say, you add 32 rays and one circle, you get 33, and it's a concealed number of the worship of Lucifer. This is the flag of Kazakhstan, one of the Russian republics. It also has 32 rays sticking out from the central circle, a symbol of the sun. This is the flag of, and help me with this, Kyrgyzstan. That's the best I can